Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil Live. I'm Mike King, and it is awesome to be with you. We're going to get going right away with this thing. Choir practice is designed to be unscripted. We're going to just have some fun. We're going to talk to some amazing people, and we might even get a little bit emotional as we talk about some pretty tough subjects from time to time. I want to bring in my co-host tonight, Mark Safarik, former FBI special agent, former profiler. Mark and I met many years ago, and he's been on the show a number of times. It's just so great to have you here, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It's been quite a while.
It has. I think we either had to quit taking life so serious or something, but
Yeah.
usually you're like toddling or whatever, some kind of a drink. But I know I've got you late at night tonight.
Yeah, it's after 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's past that time.
Well, we're going to get rolling. I want to bring in a special guest that you and I have been looking forward to talking to. It is Officer Deon Joseph. And Deon, welcome to Profiling Evil Choir Practice. It's so good to have you back with us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be back again. It's been a long time.
It's
Yeah,
great.
awesome.
And you and Mark have had a chance to say hello. And we're going to just have like free scripted chatter. But we got to start right off the bat. What on earth does choir practice mean from a guy in the hood from your police department?
Well, for me, that statement kind of means people of like minds talking about the same issues and coming up with the same solutions in their own silo. And that's an issue because what has to happen is when you talk about choir practice, you do nothing when you're practicing amongst like-minded people. Nothing changes. We just all sit there and agree and shake hands and go have a beer. But when we become amplified voices and practice those in the public square, and I'm talking about individuals who are actually touching the issues like first responders, military, who are touching the ground level. When we do it, we can help guide the public who have gone too far left and too far right and bring them to the center so we can make better decisions on how to help society. So that's what it means to me.
That's awesome. And I think back, Mark, Joseph Wambaugh, former LAPD officer and became an author, actually in one of his books, wrote about choir practice. And it was a group of, I think, about 10 rookie officers who were going through their rookie season in the PD. And after the shift, they would get together and they would talk about the kinds of things they experienced and the emotion they experienced. They had to complain about their bosses, obviously. But yeah, I mean, look back in your career. What was choir practice for you?
I mean, having been a cop before I was an agent, even when I lecture to law enforcement, I always talk about I was an FBI agent with a cop's mentality. For me, it's always been about sort of this tribal wisdom, that is shared among individuals who are dealing with the same difficult issues on a daily basis. And you learn from one another. You learn about the issues that they deal with. They learn about the issues you deal with. And then how do you address those issues? And how do you fix things? And how do you solve things? And you learn information from, I've done this so many times, in the Bureau, these kinds of conversations with other individuals who give you a different perspective. For me, that's the choir practice. And I mean, it's a great way of learning and developing yourself.
That's awesome. Deon, you've been a police officer for a couple of decades, if not 25 years, and you have an incredibly unique job nowadays. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and how long you've been doing this?
Well, I got 28 years on in my agency. I can't say what agency that is, but it's somewhere in the Los Angeles area. And I work in a place called Skid Row. 28 years. I'm getting close to 2 more years from being what I call a triple OG, 30 years. But I've been working in my agency for 28 years. Started off at Venice Beach, palm trees, beautiful lady, Sunday afternoon. Then I ended up getting kind of a shock to my system when I got transferred to Skid Row. When I got off probation, and there is where I found my true calling. Initially, after having an aversion to it, realizing or feeling that I could not change it, but then after seeing true, genuine injustice, not the woke definition of injustice, but real marginalized individuals being victimized on a routine basis and getting no justice, I found my calling. And for those of you guys who don't know who Skid Row is, and please cut me off if I'm going too long because I get passionate about this. Skid Row is a recovery zone, and it's in the city of Los Angeles, and it has about 50 blocks, 108 programs designed to help the homeless with multiple issues. I mean, you know, drug counseling, alcohol addiction, housing, shelter, domestic violence, you name it, it's there. The issue is it's in the center of a city that's adjacent to places like Inglewood, Compton, Watts, South LA, Pasadena. And when these individuals have to come to Skid Row because no other place in town will take them for help, okay, because usually wherever else you go, you have to pay, the criminal element from those cities follow them, and they come down and they prey upon the people of Skid Row and make it impossible for them to break the cycle of addiction. And they love keeping the people on an endless spiral of addiction to obviously pad their pockets and exploit the community. So I felt like they needed somebody to stand up for them, and myself and many other officers there are doing the best we can with what we have. The only problem is we are being told to go fight these issues within the homeless community of crime, with the justice system now fighting us. And it's the most disheartening thing I'd ever seen in almost 30 years.
Incredible. And Mark, I'm sure you've got some questions that are starting to already build up in your mind. But Deon, one of the things that you taught me, I don't know, a year and a half or so ago that really resonated, and I think has been something that has driven the way I look at many of these communities where there are massive homeless camps and other kinds of things, is you said bringing sandwiches every day isn't helping. Talk a little bit about that. And folks, by the way, let me just say, folks, we're talking with Deon Joseph, a police officer working in Skid Row. We can't name the police department that he works for, but you can figure it out if you figure out where Skid Row is. And if you have questions for Deon, I'm going to be kind of reading the chat while we go along. Along with me is Mark Safarik, retired FBI special agent and profiler, and a frequent guest on Profiling Evil. And just throw your questions in here. But Deon, I'll pitch that back to you now.
Yeah, and just to give it some background, I've worked it in as a training officer, a patrol officer. I've also worked it 2.5 years as an undercover officer. And now I'm the lead officer in charge of their safety, along with other officers trying to help them. So I've been trying to find solutions, not just with crime, but with quality of life. And I know you mentioned the sandwiches. I know when you talk to many people, especially wonderful people of faith, I'm a person of faith. I'm a proud, born-again Christian, love Jesus with all my heart till the casket drops, right? That's never going to change. But I believe that he doesn't just give us faith. He also gives us wisdom and discernment. And you wouldn't realize that your act of faith are actually hurting people instead of helping them. You have to change. So what I would see in Skid Row constantly for many years was good and well-intentioned individuals coming down to Skid Row thinking they're going to change somebody's life with a sandwich or a hamburger or a plate of chicken. And it didn't work. It actually made the area worse. Here's how. There are 5 shelters in the Skid Row area, right? They serve about 12,000 meals a day, okay? And they offset their hours. So if you miss the meal at one mission, you can go to the next. They do it on purpose. So nobody ever misses a meal in Skid Row. They also give out clothes, as needed in Skid Row. So you'll never see anybody naked in Skid Row or starving. But what happens, we have people who come into Skid Row with a 30,000-foot vision of what Skid Row is based on what someone told them. And they go down there and hand things out in the street. And here's what happens. The individuals gets the sandwich or the clothing. They take one bite of the sandwich and toss it in the street because they've already eaten. Or the clothes you give them, they kind of gather up and hoard or even fight over when you leave. And they line it up on the sidewalk to sell it to make enough money to do what? Destroy themselves by buying crack cocaine. So I tell people I never tell people to stop giving. Please continue to come down and share your heart, but give with the intention to de-incentivize the streets, not to incentivize the streets. And how you do that is hygiene kits. Give them something that'll guide them to the shelters so they may take a shower and have a sobering moment and say, you know what, maybe I need to check into this program and get better. Okay. And in the hygiene kits, simple soap, shaving cream, shaver, deodorant, feminine hygiene products, hand sanitizer. That's fantastic. And the only 2 clothing items I suggest you put in those hygiene kits are underwear and socks. The rest, the missions can provide. Let the professionals do the job that they're there for, because when you do that, you're only incentivizing them to stay in the streets. And just, why would I need to go into the mission and get a sandwich when I get fed on the streets and continue to destroy myself with crack cocaine and heaven forbid, fentanyl, which is killing so many people right now.
Mark, any thoughts?
Well, I just think it's such a multifaceted problem. I know, having worked a lot of cases in the Los Angeles area with the LADA's office and LAPD RHD, and I've been down there for trials many times, staying down in that area, and it's tough. I mean, it's a multi-dimensional problem, and I think I'm not sure how you address the mental health concerns and mental health issues. Those kinds of issues need, attention on a daily basis. So food, clothing, shelter, mental health, someone to stay on top of these things for these individuals, it's got to be incredibly, incredibly difficult.
And it is a challenge. So like I said, my thing I tell people, I'm not telling you not to help. Just be more diligent about acquiring knowledge about how. Go take a tour through some of the major missions downtown. I can mention them. I'm off duty. Union Rescue Mission, incredible organization that helps families, men, women, and children. Midnight Mission, incredible organization. They're a secular mission. They're not faith-based. You have the LA Mission, great job programs. They're actually blazing a trail by partnering with drug programs in their facility. You have these great organizations that are doing the work. So take a tour and figure out how you can volunteer and be a part. And even if you feel you can't volunteer, give them the money, give them the thing that they need so they can continue to sustain and continue to help people. But once again, you cannot come into you can. It's not illegal. It's just not wise. You're doing more harm than good when you feed them in the street. And that
makes complete sense. Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting to me, Deon. I remember also as we were talking, I come from Salt Lake City, and we don't have the problems you have there. Although, like Mark, I was fortunate to help build pieces and parts of your real-time crime center. I did the same in New York City and many other major cities, and understand, have known every chief you've had since Daryl Gates, who was the day before he retired. I was sitting in his office. And the thing that you really taught me too, that really stuck out to me, is that when you go down there, you're in this really interesting position because you represent the government, you represent law enforcement, and yet you have people walking up and kissing you and thanking you for looking out after them, calling you their father. I mean, that is remarkable to me.
Yeah, that's a blessing, and that's a gift that I have to give all thanks to my creator, my faith. I'm a big person of faith, and I try to follow that way. My parents, who instilled that in me through their walk of helping the homeless, 41 foster children, mending marriages, literally healing the sick and raising the dead whenever they could. Those are my parents. So, when I first got to Skid Row, I did try to do it the old-fashioned way: arrest every bad guy I could possibly find, and which is noble. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you have a system that supports you in doing that. That's a great way to go. But when you realize you're working in a system that doesn't support you in that, you have to find other ways. And the other way was to be visible to the community, gain their trust, become like family to them. Before, I left a bad taste in people's mouth for my first 7 years, because all they saw was me showing up, opening the back of my patrol car, and throwing people into the backseat of my car. And they all looked like the same color, because 80% of the Skid Row population is African American. So the perception was, I hate Black people, which is wrong. I love being Black. It's beautiful. I don't want to change anytime soon. But I knew what these individuals were doing. But because I didn't have time as a patrol officer to stop and explain myself as to why I'm doing this for you, not to you, it left a bad taste. So when I became a lead officer and promoted as the main liaison, something told me to just get out, walk the beat, stop arresting for a second, and get to know the people. And I started talking to people, and you find out there's a silent majority in Skid Row who actually want to support you. They just don't trust you because of everything they've been seeing on the news, all these incidents that they keep putting together, this montages of police abuse and shoving it in their face, saying that this is what policing is. So I really had to stop and be present. I found being present was more effective in reducing crime than actually arresting people and then being gone for 3 or 4 hours processing someone, where during that 3 or 4 hours, people are being victimized because I'm not there. So I stayed present, and I discovered that most people wanted the police to be visible. They wanted them there. And then I started getting to know their stories and who they were. And these people would just come up to me and just talk to me. Hey, thank you for this. You've had this block clean for like 4 months. And because you had this block clean for 4 months, I've been clean for 4 months, because some people want to get better. They just don't have an environment that's conducive to change, so that the influence of the service providers that are desperately trying to help them can have more of an influence than the criminal element. So I feel like the law enforcement position in that area should be, we create the environment conducive to change so that the service providers can bring. And when I took that mentality, we saw, along with my fellow officers, we had a 40% drop in all crime. Death reduced 33%. And people generally, for the most part, accepted what we were doing because they understood. Now we understand where it's coming from. You're not trying to hurt us as the activists. We're conditioning them to believe. You're actually making it better for it. Here was the result. More people graduating from drug programs, less guns and drugs coming into the programs, less women being raped in tents. Like I said, if you can't see them, you can't save them. Less people over, and I have data to back this up. I know you don't have time to go over data, but less people overdosing in tents. And we had that place relatively safe from 2006 to about 2011, until, of course, laws change and the social justice movement took over the justice system, and everything got reversed. And now we're right back to where we were. And what makes it more dangerous, now the justice system is fighting us. And we can't, for the most part, we can't stop it. We can't put that violent suspect in jail for a long enough period of time for the community to feel a sense of relief. We can't put those drug dealers away for a long enough period of time to at least deter some of them from the activity. And as a result, it's really trying on the homeless. And now fentanyl is just killing so many people. But I don't want to talk too much. I'll let you guys respond to that.
Wow. Mark.
Yeah, I think I just know that the justice system, especially in California, has been working against law enforcement. You know, back when you were making all those arrests, at least you could keep people in jail for a period of time. But now, I mean, making an arrest, they're back out before the paperwork is even processed. So there's no consequences for being arrested. I just can't imagine. It's got to be incredibly tough to do what you do. But your presence on the street, like the beat cops walk in the street rather than, being in a patrol vehicle, I think is really, if you have studied any criminology, you understand that kind of the way that law enforcement works that way, being in the community, being on the street with those individuals is really a beneficial way to do it.
It's one of the best tools we have until mindsets change again. Right now, I hate to say it, but I'm doing less crime prevention and I'm doing more what I call death prevention.
Yeah.
Where instead of getting the guys causing the problem, the drug dealers, and getting them off the streets, I have to stay visible as much as I can to keep them from poisoning people with fentanyl. I've lost people I've known for 25 years in Skid Row. One girl I met when she was 17 years old. And I said, young lady, stay out of trouble. I gave her the speech. And she finally got housed after 17 years, and she ended up overdosing in the hotel. She just got housed and overdosed on fentanyl. So these are the things that people always say, well, we don't want to put addicts in prison. Neither do I. But before Prop 47 and all these other laws came into effect, they were in long enough to get some of it out of their system, and they were sent to mandatory treatment. And what that did was this: if they were, as a condition of their probation, assigned to mandatory treatment, if they missed a program, that gave me the right to arrest you and bring you back, and not send you to prison, but get you back into the program. And that seemed to also have a better impact than what's happening now, which is hands off. Let's just let the people do it, and they'll get better on their own. And as we're finding out, they're not getting better on their own. In fact, it's even worse. They're dying at such a high rate.
All right, I'm going to pause for a minute, fellas, because one of our long time viewers wrote, "Great necklace, Deon. What does it represent?" So tell us a little bit about that, Deon.
All right. Well, several years ago, I, as a African American, I always wanted to know what I was. I knew who I was. I'm Deon Joseph. I'm a good guy. I try to be the best guy I can be. But, I got tired of going to parties and everybody telling me their backgrounds. And I was like, I don't know. I'm from America, right? So what I did was a DNA check. And I discovered that I was from Nigeria, the Congo, Cameroon, and all these great places. I think I'm 1% Swedish. I don't know how that happened, but we're figuring that out. But after 2 days after finding that out, I was going shopping for a wedding. African wedding. A friend of mine had an African themed wedding. And I said, okay, so let me go get my African garb. I go to this place and I bought a bunch of stuff. And the lady says, you know what? You look like a leader. And I was like, I don't know how you know that, but she said, no, seriously, here, I want to give you this for free. So she gave it to me. And I said, wow, this is beautiful. She said, where? She said, it's from West Africa. She says it means one who provides direction. And I've been wearing this ever since. I'm so proud of that connection. Making that a connection and then getting this to kind of like pay homage to my ancestors. Yes.
That is fantastic. I love the 1% comment too, because when all the DNA testing came out, my wife immediately sent in her DNA and it came back saying that she had Viking blood in her, and she was just convinced she didn't. So she did like 4 other tests until she could confirm, and she determined that it was wrong. So she sent a note to Ancestry, and they responded and said, no, the better and the bigger our database gets, the more accurate we are. You're not Viking, but keep the tattoo anyway.
I was just joking with my wife the other day. I said, baby, we're all in mixed marriages.
That's exactly right.
Well, I know I'm a half Viking, so I'm half Norwegian. So I know that's awesome. True.
You got the height for that one, brother. So, Deon, another thing that I thought was really interesting, and maybe you could speak to, because it troubles so many people. I'm going to kind of make it a 2-part question with a comment, hopefully. The first is that when you work the street, you oftentimes look the other way when a guy might steal something because he's starving. And somewhere down the road, that person becomes someone that will give you a little information back that you can create something bigger on. Talk a little bit about how you determine when something kind of reaches that threshold that you have to really do something about, knowing what the condition is out there and the chances of rehabilitation in some of these cases. And then I'll come back with my second question.
Well, for me, I never look the other way, but how I try to change hearts and minds is when they did come into my custody, I tried to counsel them. I did some out-of-the-box things. I put personal poems that I wrote, inspiring them, information about drug programs inside and outside of Skid Row. But for me, letting you go was not helping you. That was just my way, a different way of doing it. Now it's different to the extent to where it's not looking the other way, but because crime is so out of control to a large degree, and you also have less resources to deal with it, you kind of have to be very, very selective in what you do or don't. Some people will get mad at some cops and say, well, why didn't you arrest that guy smoking a crack pipe over there on 5th and Main? Well, because if I do, I'll be out of the field for 4 to 5 hours, and probably 8 if he's sick, and I won't be there to stop the stabbing or the rape. So you have to kind of judge, if I arrest this guy for the pipe, which is now a ticket nowadays, or that minor warrant, then I'm not available to stop the shooting. We've had several mass shootings in Skid Row. We've had just cold-blooded killings. That the reason why is because officers are so strapped. They're handling so many calls, and sometimes they get stuck on things that are, in my opinion, kind of innocuous at this moment in time. That it leaves the community open to danger. In a perfect world, we have the resources and we can enforce all the laws. And all the laws, with the exception of the violent crimes, with intention to get people to services if we know that alcohol, drugs, mental illness are what's driving them to commit those crimes. For the misdemeanors, that's what I want, or the minor crimes or the low-level felonies. But for the serious felonies, you're never going to see anybody look away from that. Once again, the problem we run into is they're looking out serious felonies like they're misdemeanors in California. And it's very disheartening to the law enforcement community. We want to make a difference. It's not just me. We all want to make a difference. But the issue is, the justice system's not working with us. So not only are we disheartened now, what we're looking at is citizens. When they talk about, well, crime is down. Our stats are showing crime is down. No. Crime is not down. It's just citizens have started to give up hope because you've called the officer for this trespass suspect and it's taken them 90 minutes to get there. That's why it seems like, and I know this is true because I handle community meetings. And while I'm at these community meetings, these people start venting. Or Joseph, why can't you guys stop this? Why can't you? I said, whoa, back up. You got my number. Why haven't you called me? Well, because we know there's not much you guys can do. And it's really, really sad. You guys arrest the guy for a stabbing, and next thing he's out the next day, or his crime has been downgraded to a low-level crime. So now the community's losing help, and now they're not even reporting crime anymore. So people have to understand we do have to, and it's unfortunate. Sometimes we do have to kind of pick and choose our battles to a degree.
Yeah, I popped this up. Michelle Morris, I call her my in-house counsel attorney from Texas, who is just a great friend. And by the way, fellas, if you ever get a chance, and anyone listening out there, go back and listen to a video I did with Michelle. It's called A Serial Killer Read Bedtime Stories to Me. And Michelle's father was a Texas Ranger who, when she was just a little toddler, little tiny girl, happened to have a serial killer out from jail, showing him the places where he'd buried some bodies. And it was so late at night, he told his wife, hey, I got to grab this guy something to eat. And she said, you stop by the house and let's feed him. And so he stopped and he had him out on the front porch. And her mother said, you will not feed this man out on the front porch. So he brought him in the house. These are the old days. And fed him dinner. And she walked in very brazenly and climbed up on his lap with a book and said, I need you to read me a storybook. So she had a serial killer read to her. And Safarik will talk about that in detail. But she threw a question out. And I'm going to have you end with this, Deon, because you've had a death in the family. Thanks for taking time, and God bless your family as you go through this difficult time. But Michelle's question was pretty simple and really difficult. Are the resources available and you're lacking funds for Skid Row, or are there things you really need and you don't have the money for it?
The biggest things we need, in my opinion, public safety is the cornerstone of anything you want to do. If you want to build a stadium and you want hundreds of thousands of people to come down and see the Lakers or a show, it has to be safe to be able to do it, for people to be able to come. They're not going to come if it's not safe. And it's the same thing for places like Skid Row that we dub a recovery zone. Safety is the cornerstone. So I think that one of the most important facets of making people's lives better is making sure you have a fully staffed and fully supported law enforcement agency that's not just supported by command, which for the most part, I got to say, I have some great leaders that I work for, but also by the upper echelons of our system. The judges, the district attorneys, which, my God, now in LA County, we have public defenders as district attorneys. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. So that's the first shoe to drop. The second thing, we need to focus on mental health. Okay. And when you talk about money, I get tired of millions and millions and billions of dollars being thrown at homelessness. And where does that money go? Into the pockets of bureaucrats, construction companies who inflate the prices. I mean, literally, it costs $700,000 to $800,000 for one unit to house one person. That's insanity. So that $1.2 billion we got a few years ago was gone just like that in a few short months. And now we have to keep begging for more billions and billions of dollars that's going to social workers. I call it the homeless industrial complex. Instead of putting that money into building housing for people suffering from mental illness, changing the mental health laws, instead of a 72-hour hold for people who we routinely have to detain for who are constantly in mental health crisis, or even worse, dual diagnosis. That means they're on drugs and they're mentally ill. And instead of just that revolving door of releasing them in 6 hours, hey, let's put them into one of these housing facilities involuntarily for about 6 weeks. And I say this not because I want to rob them of their rights, but we have to use our common sense here. And here's common sense. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for a person struggling with mental illness who hasn't taken their medications in months. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for them to benefit from the therapeutic attributes of their medication. Okay, So it makes no sense to bring them in for only 72 hours or less and release them back in the street, because guess what's going to happen? I'm going to find them on top of a building again and have to talk them down and bring them back to you again. And once again, that's another tax on our resources, but you're not helping the problem. So I say this, it should be 6 to 8 weeks for several reasons. One, you got to medicate them, stabilize them, okay? Two, you have to detox them, because many of these individuals are on drugs too. So they're not even going to listen to you if they're full of cocaine, methamphetamines, and fentanyl. If the only thing on their mind is, let me go get my next hit, they're not listening to you. They don't care about getting better. And thirdly, you have to streamline the process. See, a lot of these things aren't necessarily solved with money. They're solved with common sense. Streamline the process of conservatorship. Because I talked to hundreds of families over the years who wanted me to help them reunite them with their loved ones who was on Skid Row. And I would do it, but unfortunately, the system releases them and now they have to find them. It's like a needle in a haystack all over again, and they're calling me for help. So streamline the process of conservatorships so that their loved ones could help them get control of their lives. If you do those three things, I guarantee you're going to see about a third of the homeless problem drop almost immediately overnight if the laws change. But that has to do with our legislators, who you vote for. Okay, be careful who you vote for, what you vote for. Those things are very, very important. We have to get back to the basics and start using common sense as it relates to any of these major challenges that we all face.
Thanks, Deon. When you get time, go and read the chat, and maybe you can answer some of the questions that people are filing in, shooting towards you. I know you gotta take care of family first, but Mark, any thoughts before we cut Deon loose?
Yeah, those were all really great points that Deon was making. I think it's it's such a difficult problem, and you have to have people that want to get help, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't want to get help, and some of them that are addicted and have mental health issues, they don't even know that they want to get help. You're absolutely right about titrating people on medication. You can't do it in a couple of days, getting them detoxed. And I mean, I just think it's not going to happen, because right now, the way the political system is, that taking people's liberties away, in their voluntariness of being on the street or doing what they want, it's just going to be almost impossible. I mean, you're absolutely right. 6 to 8 weeks to get a lot of these people straight. But, the way the system is now, we can't even keep people, in overnight for serious crimes. But, taking their liberties away for 6 to 8 weeks, even though it would benefit them, I think is just a really, really tall ask.
Yeah, it really is. And when I say 6 to 8 weeks, even if it was just 6, look, I'm not talking about taking their rights away and putting them in insane asylums, because we know the insane asylums back in the 60s, so those were cruel, inhumane places. But the mistake we always make when something goes wrong is we throw the baby out with the bathwater instead of fixing the bathwater so we can bathe the baby, right? So they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and that's the problem. No, just fix it. Just do a little reorganizing, restructuring. And I don't want to take away somebody's freedom for the rest of their lives, but you wouldn't let a triple bypass patient off of a operating table. You wouldn't let him go home the next day, would you? Absolutely.
But that's the way it would be pitched. I mean, that's what people would say. You're taking their rights away from them, even though you're absolutely right. This is what they need to get straight.
Yes, and we're talking about civil liberties groups. You know what the funny thing is? There was a point where I talked to a few civil liberties groups, I won't mention the group, where they were like, we absolutely agree with you, but it's our leadership. See, a lot of them know that we're right in what we're saying, but it can't go against the grain. And as long as those, and I'm not going to say they're cowards, it's called survival mode. They got to survive. You're right. This problem is going to persist until more people get hurt. Like I said, I'll say it's gotten bad, but it hasn't gotten bad enough yet. And so I guess I hate that we have to wait till it gets bad enough yet. I don't want that. I want Americans and legislators to come together, listen to first responders, firefighters, law enforcement officers who are on the street, and give them the freedom to tell you what we're seeing every day, so you can make decisions based on that, not based on ideology. Because I feel like we're basing too much policy on theory and ideology that's proven to fail. instead of sitting back and saying, you know what, we're not doing this right. Let's bring all the true experts to the table, the people who are touching it, and let's see what they have to say and then make policy from there. I hope at some point we can do that before we actually lose, not just my state where I'm at, but our entire nation. It seems like it's just sliding off of a cliff. And I shudder to think what it's going to look like maybe 10 years from now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's crisis that drives these, these programs. It's going to have to be a crisis before somebody does something right. And even then, you reach a crisis point, and what they do may not be, may look good, to the public outside, but what is it really going to be effective?
And you would think fentanyl, right? Fentanyl, with so many people dying from fentanyl, you would think that would be the crisis to wake people up. But there are days where I'm so disheartened by that I get into that dark place in my head. It's like, maybe this is their way of solving homelessness, to let them die. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that that's the true nature of individual policymakers, which I don't believe it, but there are days where I'm sitting in my patrol car and I'm seeing people dying. I'm resuscitating people and bringing them back to life. And I'm going, is this the plan? And of course, I don't want to believe that. But it just almost feels like someone's profiting off of this pain, because there's no way any logical, caring group of individuals would allow this to happen for so long without doing something to change it or modify
Absolutely
it.
True.
Yeah.
Well, Deon, thank you. And I want to give you just 1 minute to say hello to our next guest and then say goodbye to our next guest as we sign off. And I know your little brother is wearing a uniform too, so thank him. And let me bring in, everyone should know this face, Candice Cooley, who is the mother of Dylan Rounds, who was murdered in the Utah desert 2 years ago. The suspect in that case is approaching, we hope, a trial. But I thought you might want to say goodbye and maybe anything you may want to say to Candice before you bail.
Well, Candice, before I go, I said it to you before, my deepest condolences to you. There is no way to fill the hole of the heart of someone who loses a child. There's nothing like it. I can't even imagine. If I lost my child, I'd be a bastard. I'd need to be committed. That's just me. So you're a stronger person than I am. So I'm praying for you, and I'm so sorry for your life, and I hate that I have to go.
Well, I want to tell you thank you. Just hearing you talk, I've had my fight with law enforcement in Dylan's case, but there's always you guys out there that remind me that some of you signed up to protect and serve. You do it, and you're so amazing at it. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. God bless you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Deon. Have a great evening. Deon. Best to your family.
You too.
Well, Candice, it is so wonderful to have you here with us. We, Mark, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but Candice and I were on the phone a couple of times. I actually went out in the West Desert. I bought a drone a few weeks ago, and I've been picking the safest places to learn how to fly that thing. And I thought one place I haven't been for a year is out to where Dylan was murdered. And I wanted to go out there. So I called Candice as I was driving out and made sure that I had permission to go on to Dylan's ranch and get into the area. But this is the very western edge of Utah, if you haven't looked at the case too closely, Mark, and it is literally hundreds and hundreds of miles of sagebrush and small creek beds. And in fact, I'm going to, while Candice is talking, bring up a map that I've created of the area just to show the number of mines that are in the area alone, let alone all the other places where this young man could have been disposed of. And Candice has been an absolute rock through this entire situation, something that I don't know that many of us would have the strength to do. But I guess you just dig down and find it, Candice.
Yeah, you do. There's a different stance people can take when something like this happens. And, mine was dig my heels in and get justice for my son. Once I took that stand, I just never looked back, and I still haven't. I mean, we still fight for Dylan every day, but we fight for a lot of other people now too, and try to remind parents that there are others out there like us that you can go to that are safe places. It's hard. Luckily, I have an amazing support group, friends, families, business colleagues, so many people I call anytime. Not everybody has that. So that's definitely a big asset. I've had a lot of law enforcement agents that I've met throughout Dylan's case that have just been so spectacular that I don't think a day goes by anymore. I don't talk to somebody in law enforcement about either Dylan's case or somebody else's. We've just kind of created a group of all of us that we know and we trust, and I can call and run things by different, officers in Utah and Idaho. And that's a true blessing to be able to do that and help other people in Dylan's name, because he was going to leave a legacy farming and he was robbed of that. But he's still leaving a legacy. And it's growing every day. Every day it's growing. So that's been a blessing.
Mark, I think you probably have looked at this case a little bit, but here's obviously the state of Utah, and up here in this upper left-hand corner is the area where Dylan was living. So, in fact, if I just zoom back out for a moment, this is the Salt Lake City area.
Can I correct
you? Please do.
Mike? Okay, so this is another misconception everybody has. Dylan did not live in Lucin. Dylan went out to Lucin when he had to farm. So when Dylan was murdered, he had only been in Lucin for 3 days. 3 days in the last 9 months before he was murdered. He did not live there. He owned a farm there, and people who don't understand farming, so he would go farm at his dad's, and he had stuff here in the Twin Falls Valley he would do. It's nothing for a farmer to travel 130 miles in between farms, and that's what Dylan did consistently for years. So he did not live in Lucin. He had a farm there, and this was the first time he had ever planted it. He might have spent a month at the absolute max, a couple days at a time out there in the summer. So doing farming.
Thanks, Candice. I appreciate that. Mark, it takes from Salt Lake City just about 3 hours to go around the lake and down these darn dirt roads and out to that location. But one thing that I didn't know if you'd seen this or not, Candice, but I thought it was really interesting just thinking about the number of active mines that are in the area. These are mines that are actually being worked right now, but these are the number of holes that have been dug in addition to that all through that area.
So that
are recorded, not all those that aren't.
We had a volunteer group of retired miners actually, and I bet you the map I have of mines that they went out and searched, and I mean, we're talking guys who are getting down in them, and I'm not talking people who put it on camera or said, here we are in this mine. I bet you he sent me over 300 mines in the immediate area that they went down, and this team of guys and professional miners, and we kept it on the down low, right? Because these guys, they reached out to us. They didn't want any credit. They didn't want their names out there. But I mean, I have maps and maps and maps, and they're just unreal of what this group of guys went out and did for us. And, then there was people in the background filming it on YouTube. Oh, look, we're going in this mine that, you can't even squeeze down, but we're going to look for Dylan rounds in it. These guys know the area. They mine the area. I am pretty confident in that the mines are thoroughly searched and my son is not in a mine. Not to mention the fact Brenner was lazy. He's not going to go and get repelling gear and climb into a mine, right? I mean, the only thing you can do with Dylan in a mine is put him in one of the ones that you could just drop him down, and those are the ones that have thoroughly been checked. And I am confident in the group. So from GPS locations to weather report, I mean, it's I don't know. I bet you it's well over 800 pages I have from this group of what they went out and did on their own and documented and took the time to document, not just say we were out there, like took the time to fully document it is truly amazing.
That is amazing. Sheesh.
Yeah, but like I said, they didn't want any public attention. They didn't want anything. They didn't want anything. They just wanted to help us. But that's what Dylan touched in people. That's once his story got out, and it was the American farmer and this 17-year-old who bought his own farm. It brought together a lot of good people. It did.
Yeah,
it's been pretty remarkable. I don't know if this will be helpful at all either, Mark. I know you've been in so many of these remote areas investigating cases, but this just gives you a feel. This is just a little bit west of Dylan's farm, and this is a place where the suspect in this case was
squatting.
What do you call that?
Squatting.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
Yes.
But it just gives you an idea of how vast this area is.
Yeah,
imagine.
Well, you remember I spent 3.5 years on the western edge of Wyoming in my first office in the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is right.
I'm familiar with the weather and that kind of terrain.
Yeah.
It's
and the hard thing about where that out there in Lucerne is it's sandy, so it's always ever changing. Yeah. So even like all the different drones and all the different lenses and different ways to analyze, you can get everything out there looks like a disturbance compared to yesterday.
Yeah,
right? It's just kind of an ever changing landscape, and so it's really hard to say, oh well, that looks like it's out of place, because everything looks in its place while looking out of place at the same time. So how on Sunday, it would have been June 5th, and we had a bunch of private choppers came out, another good group of people who just did it on their own. And I was finally able to get up in the air, and it's like York was explaining to me. He said, people think you can see from the air. He says, I have flown over people who are alive trying to wave me down.
Right.
That I've flown over them 3 times before we ever seen them. Like, people think you get in the air and you can just see everything, and a bird's eye view is not what I thought it was. That's for sure.
Well, I think you said something that's really important, and these are the kinds of things that I look at when I'm, doing these kinds of assessments, in homicide cases that I've been doing for, 25 years now. You said that Brenner is lazy, and the other thing is that people go to places that they have a level of comfort with.
They're familiar with, and yes,
that they're familiar with, and people are generally lazy. They are. In homicide cases, in the movies, they bury bodies all the time, in the middle of but in real life, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because it's very difficult to do it. It's a lot of work, and especially in the terrain that was out there.
Yeah. Well, and that's, we'd always have people say, well, people would call in when everything was so crazy in the beginning. Oh, we know we used Dylan's pickup. Like, we know that. We seen Dylan's pickup going out of town in Montello, or seen it headed towards Idaho. So Brenner would not drive on the interstate on a regular day, or on the highway. Absolutely wouldn't happen. He absolutely would not. So you're going to tell me he has a body in the back of a pickup that's not his, and so now he's going to go drive on the highway?
Right,
no,
exactly.
Absolutely not going to happen. He's right there somewhere. We just, we got more resources. We're not the same family we were before. I'm not the same person. I know I got resources and allies. I can come in that week and hit it. He's not far, because Brenner never went far.
Well, and he's not a mastermind, right?
No,
people give these people too much credit, in terms of what they think they're going to do, to hide from the crime. But he didn't do very much to keep people from focusing on him. So you're absolutely right.
All of Dylan's RTT data matches that Brenner never left the area that day, and that's all disclosed in the hearing. That's nothing that's secret. He never left that area. Dylan's phone, and it continued to move. So, pretty much from what we can tell and what we know that we haven't released, because we like to keep our search areas private, because, we don't want a bunch of people out there trampling. But We've got a pretty good idea of what we're going to hit this summer. We got a lot more of a grasp on it and being able to see the RTT data and you know, and we'll do the best we can. You know, unfortunately, Box Elder will never go out and try to locate Deon. That's they haven't since the first summer. So, you know, we're kind of on our own on that, and that's okay. Frankly, at this point, I'd rather have it that way.
Yeah. So, Candice, why don't you take a moment and tell people where we are on the criminal case, and if you have any sense of a timeline, what that is, and then we'll talk about a couple other things.
So right now we are set out for a preliminary hearing finally May 14th, 15th, and 16th. The only hearings we've ever had has all been about what attorneys Brenner's entitled to. He ended up with 2, even though he was only entitled to 1. But, you know, pick your battles wisely. So we didn't fight that one. So that's where we're at, is waiting for May. Luckily, I've been busy on enough cases that have turned out well that I thought back in November, May was the end of the world and I'd never make it that long. And now I'm going, holy smokes, it's only like 3 months. I've almost made it. Like maybe something will happen, but you know, a prelim really isn't much. I mean, it's really not that much. And honestly, in our justice system and hearing Deon talk about it, you know, who knows what the next delay could be, right? We haven't had a single thing that hasn't been delayed. So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have a lot of faith in our justice system that this isn't going to be pushed out for some reason or another. So I've just really focused on digging into other cases. It's awesome. We got to help Tammy bring Jaden Fishman home last week. That's just truly amazing. That's all been the awareness through Deon's legacy. So I just, you know, keep my heels dug in and keep pushing forward for other families while we wait for our injustice justice system. Because right now, Deon has no rights and Brenner has all of them. And that's not how it should be.
It's always the way it is. It's really unfortunate. Yeah,
it is. It is. Something needs to change. Unfortunately, in my opinion, too many families don't have the support. They don't have the strength and they don't have the means to stand up and fight, because if more did, you know, there's power in numbers and that's what makes a change. And right now we just don't have the numbers that can fight for a change.
No, but other families have you, and that's
right. And that's
really
what we
good.
want to change. And that's where the power in numbers come. I mean, you know, everybody needs a good leadership. Everybody needs a good place to go. And that's what we want Deon's legacy to be, is come to us. We'll fight for you. We'll help you.
Now, Candice, have you got your new website up and rolling?
Oh yeah. So we're working on that. So we got the domain and everything. Deon's legacy is reserved. I've been so busy on a few other cases. And of course, as always, Jazz from Missing in America Network is just absolutely phenomenal. And so she's been helping me work on it. Luckily, I think I'm going to have the time in March to get down to Phoenix and spend some time with her so we can get it live. It's hard to do it remotely with each other. We kind of need to be side by side. And she's that side of it for me, because I can do the public and the talking and the keep everything going, but she's got the guru on how to do all that stuff. That's a little out of my realm. I don't know how to build a website, but we are working on it. We got Deon's legacy up and running and his store on Etsy. We're working on some amazing fundraisers for the K9 unit that we'll be announcing soon. So yeah, we finally got a lot of forward momentum and support. I mean, it's like, you know, Mike, Dr. Phil's picked up Deon's show. I'll go do that next week. There's going to be one of the state Utah legislators there that is fighting to make warrants actually be executed instead of just like Brenner's. Yeah, you can issue a warrant, but if you don't execute it, it's not even as good as the paper it's written on, right? Like, it's fine to say, hey, James Brenner, you know, you have a warrant out for felony aggravated assault, but we're not going to arrest you. So what's the point of the warrant?
Yeah. You know, one really cool piece of news that I don't know if you're aware of or not is the state of Utah a couple of years ago passed a statute that will not allow someone convicted and sentenced to life in prison on a homicide where the body hasn't been recovered to ever get out of prison unless they tell where the body is.
Yes.
So, and I'd love to see every state in the country pick up that kind of a mentality. But
Yeah.
you'll eventually bring that young man home, and
we will.
I just salute you for your strength.
We will.
How can people find you, Candice?
So right now we've changed everything on Facebook to it is just Dylan's Legacy now, and it'll say official site by Missing in America Network. If you ever see anything, and it's not just Dylan's case, any of the cases I'm working on, when we pick up and create a Facebook page for awareness because we're trying to find them, if it's not by Missing in America, stay away from it. There are so many Find Dylan rounds and Justice for Dylan's pages out there, and they're all fake, and they've all got fake information. If it's not powered by Missing in America and I have to do with it, it's fraudulent. And I cannot stress enough to people, if a loved one goes missing, if you're trying to find somebody, go to the Missing in America Network. They will give you a safe place. They will control it. They will make the Facebook page be what it needs to be. And that you won't find yourself in the position I found myself in for the first 6 months. So they're amazing. And it's nonprofit. You don't have to pay them anything, and they just do it. And they're amazing at it.
Well, thank you. And Candice, we've already talked about this, but we're going to get you back on choir practice to talk a little more. I promised Mark we would be done at 9 because I turn into a pumpkin at 9 Utah time. And I want to give him the last word with you before we say goodbye.
Okay.
I have dealt with parents of murdered children my entire career in so many of these cases, and some of the parents are amazing, like you. I worked a case, double homicide, when I was a detective, and I am that was 35, 40 years ago. I'm still friends with those parents of the murdered kids, and they were like you, push that every single day. And it's amazing. You're amazing, and parents like that are just, you're a lifeline for so many people, and I applaud you for that. And I'm thankful, because there are so many families that don't have that kind of support, that don't have that internal strength to move forward like you have. And I mean, it's amazing to see.
Well, and I just, I want to leave everybody with a thought, and everything I've been through, people just need to remember that awareness is the key. And with awareness comes education. With education comes change. And that's what we all have to remember to fight for. It takes the first step, and that's awareness. Be aware of all these different things. People, you can't say you don't agree with the law if you're not fully aware of it, and you got to educate yourself, and you got to step out and change it, right? You have to take the proper steps. You can't just say, I want this to change, and just never do anything about it. And so I encourage parents everywhere to keep that in mind. Just saying, hey, I support this organization, I support Dylan's Legacy. Then when we ask for votes and we ask for stuff to change, go out and do it. Because just saying you support Dylan's Legacy and what we're fighting for isn't enough. Get your education, make sure you agree with us, and then make the change.
And it starts with the lawmakers too. You have to elect lawmakers who will support these kinds of programs and support these kinds of laws.
Yeah. And it takes a lot. It's taken me, 14 months since I really started fighting, but we finally have legislature standing up and listening. Finally. And it has been an exhausting battle. But now I call everybody, you've supported us in the fight for Dylan, in the fight for so many others. Now you pressure your legislature, you go out and vote, you make the people get into office who make the changes that you say.
Absolutely.
So action, take action.
Thanks, Candice. I hope that you have a safe trip down south, and say hello to the doc, and we'll plan on getting a recap when we get you back.
So nice to meet you, Candice.
You too.
Really,
Thank you, guys.
Stay strong.
Yep.
Have a great evening.
You
Goodbye.
too.
And everybody go back and check all the chat, Candice, and maybe you can answer what questions people have. And because there's a lot of folks weighing in.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye. Wow. Isn't she amazing?
That was, yeah. I mean, parents like that are, and I've dealt with and met so many of them, and they're just amazing people. They're amazing. They have such internal strength. It's just, you wonder where it comes from, really. I mean, because I'm like Deon, you know, I can't even imagine one of my children being killed. It just would be devastating. And I mean, I don't know how you recover, but some parents can push through and do wonderful things, and she obviously has.
Well, she's a tough cookie, but she's earned every stripe she has, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
Mark, I really wanted to talk a little bit about spree killings, but we're going to have to put this back together again.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'd like you to take a minute and just tell people what you're doing now. Tell them about your book, Spree Killers, and then we'll say goodnight to everybody.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm still filming. I do a lot of filming. I'm filming in a week and a half for another television show, an episode on serial killers, true crime stuff, you know, just weighing in on, you know, how I assess, you know, these different cases and, you know, what their behavior means. I'm still publishing journal articles, writing, and consulting, doing a lot of consulting and expert testimony work, and talking about spree killers. You know, I have my book, Spree Killers: Practical Classifications for Law Enforcement and Criminology, and you know, it's really the first look at spree killers. It's the first pure book on spree killers. There's books out there that talk about spree killers, but they're a mix of serial murders and mass murders. And here, you know, Catherine and I have really called pure spree killers. And, you know, it's the largest collection of spree killers, and how we define that, and how so many of these cases in the news get listed as serial murders when they're not actually serial murders. They're spree murders. So, but we can do that another time. Absolutely.
That'd be great. I know people are weighing in, and they want to obviously have us continue on. So we're going to have Mark back. In fact, Mark's already agreed. He's going to stop in and co-host with me choir practice from time to time. And we're going to have fun every time we get together. It seems like we never hit all the things we want to talk about because
you always have great guests. That's why.
We did have great guests tonight, didn't we? And I'll tell you, when you think of the kind of cops like Deon Joseph who are out there trying to do the job every single day, because I don't know that I could do the job today.
Yeah, I mean, and he's in such a tough environment. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's really, I think that's amazing. He's an amazing individual. But I think
we're lucky to associate with people like him, but I feel lucky to associate with you. I can't believe all the fun talks we've had over the years, and I consider you a very dear friend. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been friends for multiple decades. So absolutely.
You're older than I might be older than you. I don't know. So I'm gonna reserve that.
Let's not talk about who's older than who. All right.
All right. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining.
I don't want to be in the one-up position.
Yeah, exactly. I want to thank everybody for joining Profiling Evil tonight. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, if you like audio podcasts, please check out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform, and share choir practice with your friends. We're only doing it on the first Monday of every month, and as you've seen tonight, it is going to be top drawer stuff with not a lot of time to do anything else but really enjoy content. So Mark, thanks so much, and to everybody out there, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a great night.